When my bridesmaid stole my wedding dress an hour before the ceremony, everyone expected me to fall apart. But instead of breaking down, I stayed perfectly calm. She never knew the gown she stole wasn't the one I intended to wear.
My name is Aaliyah Carter, and this is the story I never thought I'd share, how my own bridesmaid tried to steal my moment, and how I made sure she could never take the spotlight from me again. I used to think 34 was too old to be naive about friendship, but Jade proved me wrong. We met in our early 20s at an office job we both hated. Two black girls laughing in the break room about broken printers and clueless managers. Back then, her loudness felt like a shield for both of us. She would clap back at rude clients, joke about hair-touching coworkers, and I mistook her volume for protection. Somewhere along the way, I started shrinking so she could stay that loud, and I didn't realize how small I had become until I got engaged to Marcus. When Marcus proposed, everyone screamed and cried, but Jade screamed the loudest. She snatched my hand, inspected the ring, and announced, "He did good, finally," like she had negotiated the whole thing herself. My mom, Elaine, hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe, whispering, "You deserve this, baby," while Jade was already asking, "So, when's the shower? When's the bachelorette? Don't worry, I'll take over. Planning is my ministry." I laughed along, but a small voice in my head whispered that she sounded more like a producer than a bridesmaid. The first time I felt that voice turn into a knot was at a family dinner when we told everyone about the wedding plans. My Aunt Denise asked if I had picked my bridesmaids, and before I could answer, Jade raised her glass and said, "Obviously, I'm the maid of honor. Who else knows Aaliyah like I do?" My cousin Simone's eyes flickered to me as if to ask, "Did you actually choose that, or did it just happen?" I smiled and nodded, telling myself that I was lucky to have a friend so eager to help, even as my chest tightened. Planning brought out a version of Jade I had seen in flashes, but never this clearly. At the dress fitting, she sat on the couch with her phone in hand, pretending to scroll while really using the black screen as a mirror. "Turn around, girl. Let me see the back," she said, and when I did, she tilted her head. "It's cute, but with your hips, maybe something more dramatic. You want Marcus to realize what he's locking down, right?" The consultant waited for my reaction, but all I felt was a sting that sounded like, "You're not enough unless you're more." The pattern repeated with everything. My playlist was too soft, my color palette too safe, my choice to keep the guest list small boring. She would say it in front of others. "We're trying to elevate her taste, y'all. Bear with us." People would laugh, assuming it was friendly teasing. I laughed too, because it was easier than saying, "Stop talking about me like I'm some project you're fixing." Inside, though, I heard my own thoughts getting sharper. Why does my happiness always have to be her stage? How did my wedding turn into her performance? Marcus noticed before I admitted it out loud. One night, after Jade had left our place from yet another planning session that felt more like a critique, he stood in the kitchen doorway and watched me pick at leftovers I wasn't really eating. "Baby," he said softly, "do you even like the direction this wedding is going?" I shrugged and told him it was fine, that Jade just had strong opinions. He held my gaze for a long moment and replied, "Strong opinions are one thing. Making you feel small at your own wedding is another." I wanted to defend her, but the words wouldn't come. The cracks became harder to ignore at the engagement party. Jade wore a white jumpsuit with crystals across the neckline, brighter than anything I had on. When she arrived, people actually turned their heads, and some whispered, "Is that the bride?" She laughed, tossed her hair, and said, "Not yet, y'all. I'm just the stand-in," then clinked her glass against mine. Simone stepped close to me later and murmured, "She knows exactly what she's doing." I forced a smile and said, "It's just her style." But in my head, I thought, she would rather be mistaken for the bride than stand next to me and let me shine. The first real warning sign came the day we went to pick up my gown. While the boutique attendant zipped me into the dress, Jade circled me like a critic. "It's beautiful," she said slowly, "but imagine it with a deeper neckline, maybe more sparkle. You're too chill, Leah. This is your one day." I caught my reflection, a woman who had finally allowed herself to want something grand, and a friend behind her who seemed bothered that the spotlight wasn't on her. When Jade accidentally brushed her lipstick-stained fingers near the bodice, my heart jumped. It didn't leave a mark, but the panic that flared in me stayed long after we left the store. That night, Simone called me and didn't bother softening her tone. "Why does it feel like Jade is auditioning for a role instead of standing by you?" she asked. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked. "She's just excited," I said. Simone was quiet for a moment, then replied, "Excitement doesn't sound like someone rewriting your whole wedding and dressing like she's the main event. Just promise me you'll protect yourself, even if it means protecting yourself from her." When we hung up, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, finally admitting to myself that the person who should have been my safe place on that day might be the one I needed to guard against the most. I woke up on the morning of my wedding believing that nothing truly disastrous could happen, with so many people around to keep the day running smoothly. My mother was humming in the hallway. Simone was already checking in with the stylist, and the makeup artist had set up her brushes like a painter preparing for a masterpiece. Even Jade arrived with coffee in hand, sunglasses on, acting like she'd survived some glamorous hardship instead of a normal commute. She kissed the air next to my cheek and said, "Big day, babe. Don't freak out. I'm here." I smiled because it was easier than saying, "You're the one I'm worried about." As the room filled with steam from curling irons and chatter from bridesmaids trying not to spill mimosas, I felt a strange buzzing under my skin. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, though everything looked perfect. Jade took the seat closest to the mirror without asking, adjusting her wig with practiced precision, then glancing at my garment bag hanging behind the door. "You want to check it again?" she asked casually. "I know you like to double-check things." I forced a laugh and said, "I'm good." Inside, a small voice whispered, "She's keeping track of where it is." When it was time to do my makeup, the artist, a soft-spoken woman named Nia, tilted my face toward the light. "Relax your shoulders, sweetheart," she said. "You're holding all your tension in your neck." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Behind us, Jade was recounting some story about a man who had tried to flirt with her at a gas station, talking loudly enough for every corner of the room to hear. Simone walked over to adjust my veil and whispered, "Don't let her drain you today." I whispered back, "I'll be fine," even though I wasn't sure I believed it. A little before noon, the coordinator knocked on the suite door. "Dress check," she announced. If the bride wants a last glance before we start the pre-ceremony photos, now's the time. My heart fluttered with the soft, excited panic of reality settling in. I stood, smoothed the lace robe around my waist, and stepped toward the garment bag. Jade was suddenly there beside me, too close, too interested. "Let me help unzip it," she offered. I gently moved her hand away. "I got it." Her smile twitched, but she stepped back. The dress was exactly as I'd left it, sleek, fitted, the fabric catching the light like it held its own quiet breath. I felt a wave of calm looking at it, the kind that said, "You chose right. You're ready." The coordinator zipped the bag back up, hung it on the door, and said, "All good, we're on schedule." Jade, leaning against the vanity, muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Guess it'll do." I turned to her, searching her face for some sign of sincerity, but she was already smiling at someone else, pretending she hadn't said anything at all. When the photographer arrived, the room shifted into a sudden flurry. We posed on the bed, on the couch, in the doorway. Jade threw her arm around me so tightly during one photo that I winced. "Relax," she hissed through gritted teeth, smiling wide for the camera. "You look stiff." I felt heat rise in my chest but kept quiet. I didn't want a confrontation today, not when the finish line was finally in sight. We took a few last group photos, and when the photographer asked for a solo shot of me holding the veil, the bridesmaids scattered toward the snack table or the mirror, everyone except Jade, who lingered in the corner with her eyes locked on the garment bag. The moment I stepped into the bathroom to touch up my lipstick, everything felt too quiet. The room had been humming with chatter all morning, but now there was a strange stillness. When I came out, Simone was gone. A few bridesmaids were whispering near the window, and Jade's seat at the vanity was empty. My stomach tightened as I glanced at the door. The garment bag wasn't hanging where it had been. At first, my brain refused to process it. I blanked, stared harder, then looked around the room as if maybe someone had moved it a few feet to the left. The hanger was still on the hook, swinging slightly. The empty garment bag lay on the floor in a soft heap, like skin that had been peeled off. My breath hitched. "Where's my dress?" I asked, my voice cracking as it escaped me. Naya looked up from packing her brushes, her eyes widening. "Wasn't it just here?" Simone rushed back into the room seconds later, breathless. "Alia, I just saw." She stopped when she saw the empty hanger. "Oh no," she whispered. "No, no," my mother stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Maybe someone moved it to the steamer?" But when the coordinator checked the adjoining room, she returned pale and shaking her head. "It's not there. It's missing." That's when one of the junior bridesmaids, a sweet 19-year-old named Tessa, spoke up quietly. "I saw Jade leave a few minutes ago. She had something white folded over her arm. I thought it was a shawl." The silence that followed was deafening. My pulse thudded in my ears, a heavy, nauseating rhythm. My jaw tightened as I whispered, "She wouldn't." But even as I said it, I knew she would. She always did whatever made her feel big. Everyone started talking at once, searching closets, checking hallways, asking staff if they'd seen her. My mother was near tears. Simone was trying to call Jade's phone, and the coordinator was flipping through her schedule like she could find answers in the margins. I stood frozen in the center of the room, staring at the empty hook, feeling the sharp sting of betrayal settle into my bones. My thoughts scattered in every direction. She took it. She actually took it. Why? What was she planning? How far would she go just to be the center of attention? Then I heard the worst possible sentence from the hallway. She went downstairs, I think, wearing it. Wearing it. My entire body flooded with heat, humiliation, anger, disbelief. I pictured her stepping out in my gown like some twisted parody of a bride, soaking in the stares meant for me, turning my moment into her spotlight. My throat tightened so hard it hurt, and for a second I thought I might collapse. Simone grabbed my arm. "Aaliyah, look at me," she said firmly. "Don't panic." But panic was too small a word. It wasn't fear I felt. It was a deep, burning clarity rising through me like fire licking up dry wood. Every memory of Jade belittling me, overshadowing me, mocking my choices hit me all at once. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the moment she had been building toward without even hiding it. "She actually did it," I whispered, my voice shaking. "She really did it." My mother touched my cheek, her eyes watery. "Baby, we'll fix it. We'll find it." But I shook my head slowly, because something inside me had suddenly gone still, like a lake after a storm. A calm I didn't recognize settled over my shoulders, and in that cold, steady quiet, one thought crystallized. She stole the wrong dress. Simone saw the shift in my face. "Aaliyah, what are you thinking?" I straightened my veil, inhaled deeply, and said, "I'm thinking she just set the stage for her own downfall." When the room finally stopped spinning around me, I felt my thoughts harden into something sharper than panic and colder than rage. All the frantic voices in the bridal suite faded into the background as I lowered myself onto the velvet chair by the window. For the first time that morning, I let myself breathe. Simone knelt in front of me, searching my face. "Aaliyah, please tell me you have a plan," she whispered. I met her eyes and said the one sentence no one in that room expected. She didn't take my real dress. The confusion on her face almost made me laugh. "You what?" she asked, gripping my hands. I took another breath and repeated, "She didn't take my real dress. That was the decoy." I could see the realization spreading through the room like slow dawn. My mother covered her mouth. The coordinator straightened. Even Naya, who had been silently repacking her kid, froze mid-motion. "So where is the real dress?" Simone demanded. I glanced toward the far door, the one no one had touched all morning. "Locked in the vendor suite downstairs," I said. "Delivered an hour ago under Marcus's cousin's name." Jade knew every detail of the wedding except the one thing she desperately wanted to control, what I would look like walking down the aisle. And that was the one thing I had protected like my life depended on it. It hadn't always been the plan. I wanted to trust Jade, but after she accidentally brushed her lipstick near the bodice during my final fitting, and after Simone caught her asking the boutique manager questions about alteration pickup times when she thought I wasn't listening, I realized I needed to prepare quietly. Marcus helped me coordinate the second dress, but only Simone and the coordinator knew why. Better to have it and not need it, Simone had said back then. Now she looked at me with a strange mix of awe and fury. "You saw this coming?" she whispered. "I hoped I was wrong," I admitted, "but she's been trying to steal this day little by little for months." The coordinator, the only person in the room more efficient under pressure than Simone, snapped into action. "Okay," she said, lifting her clipboard. "I'll call the downstairs team and have them prep the real dress for presentation. And Aaliyah, we're going to turn this into a moment she cannot recover from." Her tone was so steady that I felt my entire spine straighten. But before she left, she paused. "You need to stay calm. Your face needs to say, 'This was always your day.' Let her look like the one crashing it." I nodded slowly. "I can do that." But calm wasn't the whole truth. Underneath the stillness, something electric was building. A sense of justice, or maybe something darker. I felt myself leaning toward the window as distant murmurs drifted from downstairs. Guests were gathering early, confused by the commotion. I could imagine exactly what was happening. Jade coming down the staircase in my decoy dress, smiling like the cameras were meant for her, acting like she was doing me some grand favor. Every step she took in that gown only tightened the trap she'd set for herself. Simone crossed her arms. "What do you want to do right now?" she asked. I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the faint music drifting from the ballroom. "I want her to understand," I said quietly. "Not just that she crossed a line, but that she walked herself into her own humiliation." When I opened my eyes, there was steel in my voice. "We need to make the timing perfect." The coordinator returned moments later with her phone at her ear. "They're ready downstairs," she said. "The platform is set, lighting cues prepared. As soon as she makes her little entrance, the staff will dim the hall lights and bring out your real dress." My heart thumped with a mix of dread and dark satisfaction. "And me?" I asked. "You'll walk out after the reveal," she replied. "Not a second before. She needs to see it first. She needs to feel the room shift." The bridal suite buzzed with a different energy now, controlled, focused, like a storm preparing for landfall. Simone stood by the door, guarding it as if Jade might burst in at any moment. My mother paced with her phone in hand, whispering prayers under her breath. Even the bridesmaids, who never got involved in drama, were now watching me with wide-eyed anticipation. "I can't believe she actually did this," one murmured. I shrugged. She's always needed the spotlight. Today, she finally blinded herself with it. As we waited, the coordinator gave us updates through her headset. "She's downstairs," she said. Oh, Lord, she's taking photos." My jaw clenched. I could practically hear Jade giggling, posing, tilting her head to show off the neckline, basking in attention that wasn't hers. Simone muttered, "She's gonna die when she sees what's coming." I didn't respond. My mind was too busy replaying months of little humiliations, moments when Jade pretended to fix me, improve me, overshadow me. This wasn't about the dress. It was the culmination of every cut she had ever delivered with a smile. Then came the moment that changed the air in the room. The coordinator's voice crackled. Lights going down in 3, 2, 1. Even from the bridal suite, we heard the chorus of surprised gasps. Then a swell of whispers. Then applause. "It's happening," she said breathlessly. They brought out the gown. I closed my eyes and pictured my real dress, structured, luminous, breathtaking, lit under the exact lighting design we had tested a week before. And beside it, Jade in a gown that looked cheap in comparison, suddenly stripped of power. "Aaliyah," the coordinator said softly, "it's time." I stood, smoothing my robe with trembling hands. My mother hurried to my side. "Baby, breathe," she whispered. "Don't let anger write your face. Let grace do it." I nodded, inhaling deeply. Not grace, I thought privately. Truth. And truth was a powerful thing when served at the right moment. Simone walked with me to the elevator, her arm linked through mine. The hallway lights reflected off her earrings, casting small glints of gold against the walls. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm ready," I said. And I was. Ready to take back what had always been mine. Ready to stop shrinking. Ready to let Jade see herself the way everyone would see her now. When the elevator doors opened, I heard the sound of murmurs flooding the lobby area. Guests were craning their necks toward the platform. The real dress shone under the spotlight, delicate beadwork sparkling like starlight across water. And Jade, still wearing the decoy, stood frozen, hands suspended mid-gesture, her expression twisted somewhere between confusion and dread. She hadn't seen me yet. She was too busy staring at the gown that made hers look like a clearance sale imitation. I stepped into view. The crowd parted. My breath stayed steady. Every eye turned toward me with a mixture of relief, awe, and curiosity. Jade spun around so fast her curls whipped across her face. When her eyes met mine, her mouth fell open. "Aaliyah?" she whispered, like saying my name might reverse time. I tilted my head and let a calm, devastating little smile form. "You look comfortable," I said softly. Her face collapsed. I was just," she stammered. "I thought you—" But her excuses tangled on her tongue. The room had already decided what had happened, and the truth was clearer than glass. She hadn't stolen my moment. She had handed it to me herself. For a second, nobody breathed. The lobby felt like a theater frozen between scenes, everyone trying to decide who was the villain and who was the main character. Jade stood there in the stolen gown, mascara thick, smile crumbling as she looked from the spotlighted dress on the platform back to me. "Aaliyah, I was just making sure it fit," she said, her voice too loud, too bright, like she could talk her way out of what everyone had already seen. In my head, a quieter voice answered, "You weren't making sure it fit. You were making sure you were seen." The coordinator cleared her throat gently, stepping into the silence like a referee. "Miss Carter," she said to me, "your dress is ready whenever you are." She didn't even look at Jade. That small act of ignoring her was its own kind of verdict. Guests shifted, whispers like wind moving through leaves. I caught snippets. "Is that her dress? Did she really take it? Who does that to a bride?" Jade heard it too. I could see the panic and the way her hands clenched around the skirt, wrinkling fabric she hadn't paid for. Simone came to my side, shoulders squared, chin lifted. "Let's get you into your real dress," she murmured, her voice steady enough to walk on. As we turned away, I felt Jade reach out and brush my arm. "Leah, wait," she hissed under her breath. "You're overreacting. I was just playing. You know I wouldn't really steal your moment." I turned my head slowly and met her eyes. "You already did," I said quietly. "You just didn't realize whose moment you gave it to." Then I walked off, feeling the weight of every step, feeling the room's attention follow me instead of her. In the vendor suite, the air was cooler, calmer, scented with starch and flowers instead of hairspray and nerves. The real gown hung on a separate rack, untouched, its beating catching the soft light from the window. For a moment, I just stared at it, letting the silence settle around me. My mother stepped behind me, her hands resting gently on my shoulders. "You planned for this," she said quietly, not accusing, just acknowledging. "I prayed I wouldn't need to," I answered. "But I also prayed I wouldn't spend the rest of my life letting somebody else write my story." As the attendant unzipped the garment bag, Simone watched me with a mix of pride and fury. "You know she's never going to admit she was wrong," she said. "People like Jade turn even their own mess into victim stories." I slipped out of my robe and into the dress, feeling the cool fabric slide over my skin like a reset. "She doesn't have to admit it," I replied. "This room already knows. That ballroom already knows. She built this stage herself." Inside, my thoughts were louder. I'm done shrinking. I'm done begging her not to hurt me, as she calls it love. When the zipper closed and the attendant stepped back, I turned to the mirror. For the first time all day, I saw myself without Jade's commentary in the background. The bodice hugged my waist perfectly, the train spilled behind me like poured light, and the neckline framed my collarbones in a way that made me feel both powerful and soft. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "That's my baby," she whispered. Simone sniffed once and then laughed. "Okay, I'm mad all over again," she said. "Imagine trying to steal this and ending up in the rehearsal version." The walk back toward the main hall felt like approaching a battlefield I'd already won. Through the double doors, I could hear the string quartet playing, guests being ushered into their seats, the normal rhythm of a wedding fighting to reassert itself. The coordinator met us halfway, her headset slightly askew. "Everything's in place," she said. We moved Jade out of the lobby. She's sulking, I think, but we reminded her she has a bridesmaid dress waiting. The corner of my mouth lifted. "She can wear that," I replied. "Or she can go home. Either way, she doesn't get center stage again." As we waited in the wings of the ceremony space, I caught sight of Jade near the back, now in the blush-colored bridesmaid dress she'd originally chosen, hair slightly frizzed from her earlier performance. Her eyes were red, either from crying or from anger that hadn't found a target yet. For one brief second, our gazes met. There was accusation in hers. "You embarrassed me." In mine, there was only tired truth. "You did that all by yourself." I turned away before pity could soften what needed to stay firm. The doors opened and my processional began. Bridesmaids floated down the aisle in pairs, their dresses catching flickers of light, smiles more genuine now that the chaos had purpose. When it was my turn, the music shifted and the room rose to its feet. My mother took my arm. My father had passed years ago and squeezed. "Head high, baby," she murmured. "Let them see what God still did for you today." I stepped forward, each stride steady, my veil trailing behind me like a clear boundary between the girl who tolerated too much and the woman who finally stopped. As I walked, I saw faces I loved. Aunt Denise clutching a program to her chest, Marcus's grandmother dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, cousins craning their necks to get a better view. I also saw the ripple move through the crowd as they registered the difference between the dress Jade had worn and the one I now wore. Whispers turned into soft, knowing smiles. One guest near the aisle whispered, "She looks like she was born for that." And for once, the compliment didn't feel like something Jade would grab and redirect to herself. It landed where it belonged, with me. At the altar, Marcus's eyes widened as he took me in. He whispered, "Wow," under his breath, so quietly I almost didn't catch it. When I reached him, he leaned close and said, "You okay?" I nodded, feeling the last of my earlier panic drain away. "I am now," I murmured. "Remind me to tell you later how your groomsmen almost witnessed a crime downstairs." He huffed a soft laugh, then sobered. "I saw some of it," he admitted. "But right now, all I see is my wife." That word wrapped around my heart like a bandage and a crown at the same time. The ceremony unfolded smoothly, like the universe was making up for the chaos Jade had tried to unleash. The officiant's words about partnership and trust hit harder than they might have on another day. When he said, "Love does not insist on its own way," I thought of Jade insisting on hers in every room we'd ever shared, and I silently promised myself that my marriage would not be another place where I vanished so someone else could shine. When Marcus and I exchanged vows, I heard my own voice steady and clear, not shaking, not apologizing. I meant every word. From my place at the front, I could see Jade standing with the other bridesmaids, slightly apart, shoulders tight. When it was time for the ring exchange, she looked away, as if even witnessing this part stung. A small part of me ached for the friendship we were supposed to have, the one where she would have been wiping tears of joy instead of nursing a wounded ego. But the larger part of me knew that sometimes losing someone like her is the price you pay for finally living honestly. I didn't owe her my happiness just because she'd been there during my struggles. By the time we walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, the mood had fully shifted. The story of the stolen dress had already turned into a whispered legend, but now it ended with my hand in Marcus's and the real gown trailing behind me. Guests cheered. Some clapped a little too hard, like they were applauding the fact that I hadn't let disaster win. As we stepped into the hallway, the coordinator grinned. "You gave them a ceremony and a show," she said. "I just hope you know you handled that better than most people ever could." I smiled tiredly. "I'm just glad it's done," I replied, though I knew the day still had one scene left. At the reception, the lights were softer, warmer, bouncing off sequin table runners and glassware. Our entrance as newlyweds was smooth. Our first dance was slow and grounding, Marcus's hand firm at my back, his forehead resting against mine. For a few precious minutes, the noise in my head quieted, and it was just us, swaying in the center of a room full of people who had watched us survive the morning. But as the DJ faded the music and the coordinator took the mic to announce speeches, the tension edged back in. I knew Jade would try one more time to grab a spotlight that no longer belonged to her. When the coordinator invited the maid of honor to speak, Jade immediately took a step forward. Simone, however, was faster. She glided to the microphone with the calm of someone who has receipts and zero fear. Jade's eyes flared in outrage. She started, but the coordinator gently intercepted. Given the complications earlier, the bride requested Simone speak today, she said, her tone polite but firm. The room shifted. People knew exactly what complications meant. Jade sank back into her seat, cheeks blazing. Inside, I felt a small, fierce satisfaction. I hadn't needed to yell. I just needed to choose differently. Simone's speech wasn't an attack, but it wasn't sugar-coated either. She talked about how long she'd known me, how I'd always been the first to cheer for others, how my quiet strength was easy to overlook until someone pushed too far. Then, with a careful pause, she said, "And today, when someone tried to test that strength in a way no bride should ever experience, Aaliyah didn't break. She didn't let anyone steal her day, not even for an hour." The room hummed with understanding. I felt Jade's stare burning a hole in the side of my face, but I didn't turn to meet it. I kept my eyes on Simone, on Marcus, on my mother. When it was my turn to speak, I hadn't planned to say much. But the mic felt heavier in my hand than I expected, filled with every swallowed word from the past few years. "I'm not going to name names," I began, and a ripple of soft laughter moved through the crowd because, of course, I didn't need to. But I will say this, for a long time, I thought loving people meant letting them treat me however they wanted, as long as they stayed. Today showed me that love, real love, doesn't need to steal or compete or humiliate. Real love stands beside you, not in front of you. I took a breath, letting my eyes travel across the room. Someone tried to wear something that wasn't meant for them today, I continued. Not just a dress, but a moment, a place in my life. And I realized the only reason they thought they could take it is because I kept acting like I didn't deserve it. That stops now. My voice didn't shake. It rang out clear, and the applause that followed felt like a collective agreement. We see you now, the real you, in the dress and beyond it. Jade shifted in her chair, small and stiff, forced to sit through the truth without being able to spin it. As the night wore on, people approached me with hugs, jokes, and quiet confessions. "If it were me, I would have canceled the whole thing," one cousin said. "You handled it like a queen," another guest leaned in. "I always thought that girl was a little too much," she murmured. Today just confirmed it. Even one of Marcus's uncles, a man who rarely got involved in anything that wasn't sports or politics, patted my shoulder and said, "You did right. Better to see someone's heart now than 10 years into a friendship or marriage." Each comment was a small balm on an old wound. The only person who didn't approach was Jade. At some point, I saw her slip out of the reception hall, shoulders hunched, clutching her clutch bag so tightly her knuckles were pale. For a moment, my chest squeezed with something like grief. This had been my friend. We had shared cheap wine and bad reality TV, cried over exes, laughed until our stomachs hurt. But as I watched her disappear through the doors without even looking back, I realized we hadn't been friends in a long time. I had been her audience. Today, I finally stopped applauding. The next morning, when the last crumbs of cake had been boxed up and the last centerpiece dragged to someone's car, I woke up in a quiet hotel room with my new husband's arm draped across my waist. For a few blissful seconds, my brain didn't remember anything except the softness of the sheets and the warmth of his breath on my neck. Then the memory of Jade in my decoy dress flickered in front of my eyes like a bad highlight reel, and my stomach clenched. I slipped out of bed carefully, padded over to the window, and stared at the city waking up. In the reflection, I saw a woman with tired eyes, perfect lashes still clinging on, and a face that belonged to someone who had finally stopped pretending everything was fine. My phone was on the nightstand, buzzing with notifications I'd ignored the night before. When I finally picked it up, I saw a flood of messages. Family group chats full of photos, heart emojis, and "so happy for you both" texts. A couple of cousins had already turned the stolen dress saga into memes. One of them had captioned a picture of my real gown, God's Plan A, and a blurry shot of Jade and the decoy, Plan B, that never had a chance. Those made me laugh, but the knot in my chest tightened when I scrolled further down to see Jade's name. There were dozens of messages from her. "You really embarrassed me. Wow. You made me look crazy in front of everybody. I can't believe you would let them talk about me like that." Not a single "I'm sorry." I sat on the edge of the bed, reading each message slowly. The thing that hurt wasn't the anger. It was the complete refusal to see what she'd done. In her version, I had orchestrated her humiliation out of nowhere, instead of responding to her stealing my dress before my wedding. Marcus shifted behind me, then propped himself up on one elbow. "Is that her?" he asked, voice thick with sleep. I handed him the phone. He scrolled for a few seconds, his jaw setting. "Delete her," he said simply. I exhaled a shaky laugh. "You make it sound so easy." He looked at me, eyes softening. "It's not easy," he said, "but it's simple. She keeps telling you who she is, and you keep putting your fingers in your ears." Instead of answering her right away, I opened social media. The hashtag our planner had made for the wedding was full of candid shots and videos. One clip from the lobby had already started circulating. It showed the tail end of Jade's grand entrance in my decoy dress, followed by the lights dimming and the staff rolling out my real gown. In the background, someone whispered, "Oh my God, that wasn't even hers." And another voice said, "That's what she gets." The comments were brutal in that way. Only people who witness something outrageous can be. Never seen someone fumble a friendship so hard in 1 hour. Imagine trying to be the bride and ending up the cautionary tale. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. This was what she had feared more than anything, being laughed at instead of admired. Later that afternoon, we went to my mother's house to pick up some forgotten boxes and say goodbye before leaving for a short trip. Aunt Denise was there, still in her satin bonnet, heating leftovers and lecturing anyone who would listen. "I told y'all that girl was too much," she was saying as we walked in. "Always doing the most. She finally met a consequence she couldn't out-talk." When she saw me, her expression softened. "Hey, bride," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like coffee and cologne. "You handled yourself yesterday. I'm proud of you." A moment later, Simone appeared from the dining room holding a Tupperware container. "You ready for the fallout?" she asked. "Because it's coming." The fallout didn't take long. That evening, my phone rang with a number I recognized but didn't save, Jade's mother. "Hi, baby," Miss Harper said gently. "How are you feeling?" There was genuine concern in her voice, and for a moment, I almost broke down crying. "I'm okay," I said, which wasn't completely true. "I'm just processing," she exhaled. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for what happened yesterday," she continued. "Jade told me her version, but I've known you long enough to know there's another side. I can't defend what she did. I just hope you don't let this ruin your whole memory of that day." That small gesture, her refusing to blindly take her daughter's side, felt like the nuance my heart needed. Someone could love Jade and still admit she'd gone too far. After I hung up, I opened Jade's messages again. Instead of a long back and forth I knew would go nowhere, I typed slowly, choosing each word like a step on broken glass. "You wore a dress you knew wasn't yours on a day that wasn't about you," I wrote. "You didn't apologize once. You made yourself the victim in a story you started. I have spent years shrinking so you could feel big. Yesterday showed me I can't keep doing that. I wish you well, but I'm done." My thumb hovered over the send button for a second, and in that pause, I heard every argument we'd ever had where I'd chosen silence instead of honesty. Then I pressed send, blocked her number, and sat there feeling both hollow and strangely light. Over the next few weeks, the story settled into a kind of legend among our circles. At cookouts and game nights, people would lean in and ask, "Okay, run it back one more time. How did you pull that off with the second dress?" I'd tell them about the backup order, the secret delivery, the lighting cues, the timing. They would shake their heads, half admiring, half horrified. "I would have snapped," one friend said. "You were too calm." I would smile and say, being calm was my revenge. What I didn't say was that the calm had cost me years of swallowing my hurt until I finally learned how to weaponize silence instead of letting it be the thing that crushed me. Of course, not everyone saw it that way. A mutual acquaintance pulled me aside one day and said, "Jade feels like you set her up." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the logic was so twisted it almost made me dizzy. "I didn't drag her into the bridal suite and force her into that dress," I replied. "I didn't tell her to walk downstairs and pose for pictures in something she knew wasn't hers. All I did was plan for the possibility that she would be exactly who she's been showing us she is." The acquaintance sighed. "She's saying she was just joking," they offered weakly. "Then her jokes have always been at my expense," I said. "And I'm done being the punchline." In the quiet moments between thank you notes and work emails and learning how to share a bathroom with a husband who leaves the cap off the toothpaste, I thought about my own responsibility in all of this. It would have been easy to cast myself only as the wronged saint, but the truth was messier. I had trained Jade to believe there would never be consequences. I laughed at things that hurt. I let her interrupt my stories, chase my moments, wear white to my engagement party, flirt with men I liked, all because I was afraid that standing up for myself would make me difficult. My silence had been the soil where her entitlement grew. Taking responsibility for that didn't excuse her behavior, but it did explain how we got here. One evening, sitting on the couch with Marcus's head in my lap while some show murmured on the TV, I said quietly, "I'm mad at myself for letting it go on so long." He muted the sound and looked up at me. "Growth doesn't mean you were stupid before," he said. "It just means you're not willing to keep paying the same price." I traced lazy circles on his shoulder and thought about that. For years, the price of my silence had been resentment, exhaustion, self-doubt. On my wedding day, the price of speaking up, of planning around Jade instead of for her, had been losing a friendship that had already hollowed itself out. It was expensive, but it finally felt like I was spending my energy on something that might heal me instead of constantly patching the damage. In the months that followed, I became more intentional about who sat closest to me in my life. I drew clearer lines, even in smaller relationships, telling a coworker, "That joke makes me uncomfortable," or a cousin, "I'm not okay with you sharing my business without asking." At first, my voice shook every time I practiced this new honesty. But the more I did it, the less I felt like a supporting character in the rooms I entered. I didn't need a stolen dress story to prove my strength anymore. It became one dramatic chapter in a longer story about finally taking up space. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Jade. I wonder if she ever tells the story differently to other people. Maybe in her version, I'm the villain who humiliated her on purpose. Maybe she says I changed, that marriage made me stuck up and unforgiving. There's a time when that would have kept me up, trying to control every narrative about me. Now I let it go. People committed to misunderstanding you will do it no matter how many PowerPoints of evidence you provide. My job is to live in a way that feels honest when I'm the only one in the room. And when I look back on my wedding day, I don't see just the moment she stole my dress. I see the moment the lights dimmed, the staff rolled out the real gown, and a room full of people watched the truth take center stage. I see my mother's proud eyes, Simone's steady hands, Marcus waiting at the altar like a quiet anchor. I see myself choosing not to scream, not to fight in the mud, but to step fully into the day I had every right to claim. That's the real revenge, I think. Not the public embarrassment, not the whispers, not the memes. The real revenge is waking up every day in a life where I'm no longer afraid to say, "This is mine," and to walk away from anyone who tries to take it. And if I ever have a daughter, I'll tell her this story, not as a warning about jealous friends, but as a lesson in listening to the first whisper that says, "You deserve more than this," before it becomes a scream.